My name is Tara, and I'm a recovering Catholic. It's been 2 decades since my last confession, and I still feel kinda guilty about that. Long after my last Mass, I'm still dealing with shame, self-hatred, and being a stick in the mud. And these are just a few of the things I learned in Catholic school. My early education made me resistant to progress in 3 ways. The first was prudery. I was a late bloomer when it came to anything related to sex or gender. I didn't come out as furry until my late teens, I didn't fat for the first time until my mid-20s, and I didn't come out as non-binary until my mid-30s. At this rate, I won't make another major self-discovery for a decade. Granted, Catholic schools were only one of the reasons for this. Another was that I'm on the asexual spectrum, and another reason was society at the time, thanks in part to technology. I didn't have the internet until the late 90s, and I didn't have high-speed internet until the mid-aughts. So for a while, I just didn't have words for the things I was experiencing, and the only exciting images I had were in comic books. Even after I discovered furry art online, I felt guilty for looking at it. In high school, I was required to read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which has a section that shames looking at pornography, and that was talking about normal porn. Imagine how I felt about furry stuff. The book also had a section that promoted sexual abstinence, which just doesn't work. Case in point, I once told a classmate that there was a new building on a girls' Catholic high school, and he jokingly asked, "Is it a crisis pregnancy center?" If sex was considered bad, then queerness was considered doubly bad. In grade school, there was a game called Smear the Queer, and this was back when the words queer and gay were used as insults. We all had to take religion class, and I once looked at what the workbook said about being gay. It said that gay thoughts are fine, while acting on them isn't. So it's okay to be who you are, as long as you completely hide it and pretend to be someone else. Queer phobia wasn't the only form of bigotry I encountered. There was also sexism. Like a lot of other Catholic high schools, mine was segregated by gender, under the theory that we'd be less distracted that way. It's sound logic if you totally ignore everyone who's gay, lesbian, bi, pan, poly, or omni. These segregated schools beg questions, like if a kid is trans, can they go to the school of their gender identity? Also, if I'd known back then that I was NB, where could I go to school? In addition to queer phobia and sexism, there was also racism, which is to be expected. In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that public schools could not be segregated by race. The very next decade, in the 1960s, my Catholic elementary, middle, and high schools were founded, which isn't just a coincidence. To quote the Southern Education Foundation, private schools in the South were established, expanded, and supported to preserve the Southern tradition of racial segregation in the face of the federal court's dismantling of separate but equal. Decades later, my Southern home city was mostly black, but my schools were mostly white. You could chalk that up to class or income rather than race, but they intersect too much to separate out. Racism also found its way into lessons. One of my high school history teachers was the one to teach me the term anchor baby, and he also claimed that the Civil War was fought for states' rights. To quote John Oliver, if the Confederacy was not about slavery, somebody should really go back in time and tell the Confederacy that. There were other incidents. For instance, in middle school, a white classmate spread a racist rhyme, which I won't repeat. Another white classmate said to an Asian classmate, "Didn't you see the sign? No Koreans." Also, a white teacher said that she didn't want a black student representing the class at an assembly because, quote, "you might be hard to see on stage." What's really hard to see is how the teacher thought that was okay to say. Finally, in addition to prudery and bigotry, there was guilt. Not just guilt over being queer, but shame in general. My Irish Catholic mother once told me, "Arrogance is the absence of wisdom." What she really meant was, don't be proud of anything ever. Similarly, Catholic school and church pressed the lesson, put others first, but not in a golden rule way. What they really meant was, put us first, and be how we expect you to be. Case in point, my religious grandmother once shamed me for reading Harry Potter, and this was before there was a good reason for doing that. Of course, talking about Catholic schools is like talking about Michael Jackson. There's one thing that most people think of right away. And although I was lucky enough to not be directly affected by that, after I graduated high school, one of the teachers was convicted for a sex crime against a minor, and another teacher, a member of the clergy who had taught me religion, was convicted of possession of child sexual abuse material. As John Mulaney said of the Catholic Church, "Don't Google us." More broadly, the Church has fought against child victims acts in my home state and others. To quote Samantha Bee, "Way to fight the stereotype, guys." Now, I don't mean for this to be a hit piece on all Catholics, or even most Catholics in general. This is about the Church as an entire institution. You might have heard, love the sinner, hate the sin. I say, love the religious, hate the religion. If you're also a recovering Catholic, here are 3 things to remember. First, the Church helped shape us, just like our parents, our guardians, or anyone or anything else with power over us as kids. It's up to us what to reinforce and what to work on. For instance, back in grade school, I shoved somebody in the hallway, and a teacher, whose opinion I valued, said, "That's so unlike you." To this day, that memory motivates me to try to be a better person. At the same time, I have too much guilt, and I'm working on that. I used to feel shame over the tiniest things, like spilled milk. Now, I just try to laugh about it. Next up, remember that we're not responsible for others' actions. For instance, all 6 of the Supreme Court justices who ruled against abortion rights were Catholic, or at least raised Catholic. I'm not thrilled about having something in common with them, but at least I'm no longer complicit by being part of an institution that promotes forced birth. Finally, remember that we are responsible for our own actions. Like it or not, we were part of an institution that has helped keep the top on top and the bottom on bottom. It's our job to do what we can to stop that. For instance, instead of going to a private college, I went to a public university. There, for the first time, I interacted with people born in other countries, people who spoke English as a second language, and people who were openly trans or otherwise queer. It let me befriend and work with people with different lived experiences, and paved the way for me to come out as trans myself. Granted, that took a long time, but better late than never. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more, and remember, it's up to us what to do with guilt.